I got to tell you that as the elected sheriff of Hennepin County, I absolutely enjoy working with the men and women out here in Richfield. Chief Henthorne and the folks out here do a great job. And I get a chance to meet with Jay on occasion for a cup of coffee at my favorite Caribou. We talk about things that are important to the residents of Richfield and the surrounding communities and how we can best support the efforts of public safety out here. Oh, now I got a key down? No, that's why. I was going the wrong way. I'm sorry. Okay, so I told you we're going to talk a little bit about the Sheriff's Office and what we do countywide, working with local law enforcement. A little bit about our roles and responsibility in conjunction with the Richfield Police. And then talk about our 8 lines of business and how that fits in. And of course, 3 things that are really important to me. One is our forensic science crime lab, the opioid crisis, and the reduction of violent crime county-wide, that how it affects your resident. And my background is real simple. I've been a police officer now for 34 years. I'm a Minneapolis police officer on leave to serve as the elected sheriff of the county. This is my 12th year serving as sheriff. I love public safety, so it's an easy job to get up to in the morning, go to work on behalf of the residents of our county. Hennepin County is a fairly big place, about 1.3 million residents or so. You can see 500 plus square miles, 104 lakes, 3 major rivers. I will not ask you, Mr. Mayor, what are the names of the 3 rivers that flow through Hennepin County, but I know you know the Crow, the Mississippi, and what's that last one? Oh, the Mississippi. Oh, I got
You
that
said
one.
that twice.
The Crow, the Mississippi,
Minnesota.
and Minnesota. Hence the 3 Rivers Park District. And you've got 104 lakes, you've got 200 plus 80 miles of waterway. And the big thing though is there are 45 cities like the city of Richfield. Everyone's unique in terms of how they provide public safety services to their residents. Your city is no different, which is why we enjoy that great working relationship. And then we've got 36 local police departments spread out across those 45 counties. Some of them work together, and many of them, or all of them, work in terms of mutual aid. So if there's an incident here in Richfield, a large incident, you'll see a response, of course, from Bloomington, Eden Prairie, maybe the airport police, the sheriff's office, as well as your local police department and first responders. My sheriff's office is structured the same way as your local police department. We run our day-to-day operations with our chief deputy, which is akin to the chief of police, and then I have 4 majors that oversee 8 divisions. Those 8 divisions are commanded by 8 captains, and each of those captains run one of our lines of business. 7 of the 8 lines of business are articulated in state law. The 8th one is not, and that is the Hennepin County Sheriff Crime Lab. Only through the good fortune and funding support by the Hennepin County Board do we provide those services to 44 out of the 45 cities countywide, and we can talk about that a little bit later. State statute, people ask me all the time, well, Sheriff, where do you derive your authority or your authorizing environment? It's truly from the residents of the county, residents of Richfield, as well as residents of Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, and Minneapolis, and countywide. Under Chapter 387, it talks about the powers and duties of the elected sheriff of the county working in tandem with local law enforcement to provide a seamless realm of public safety services. Our 8 lines of business are pretty simple, and under each one of these I wrote down, or Sam wrote down, a little bit about how that service level affects the city of Richfield. Our jail last year booked 33,000 people through the front doors, which is down dramatically from 2007, where we had about 40,000 bookings. You can see last year in the city of Richfield, 720 bookings into the Hennepin County Jail. Court security, we provide security at 8 different courthouses countywide. Southdale, which is closest to you, and hopefully it'll stay for a while. Brookdale, Ridgedale, downtown at the Hennepin County Government Center, 2 towers, 24 floors each. The Juvenile Center, Family Justice Center. Essentially about 90 courtrooms, 75 judges that provide services in the 4th Judicial District. Our patrol, Sergeant Cal McDaniel, as you see him in uniform, the sheriff's deputies have jurisdiction countywide, so in all 45 cities, Cal has the same law enforcement authority as the local police officer in that jurisdiction. You can see the number of patrol hours in Richfield as well as in Q4. Our warrant and civil process are both mandated by state law as well. Something the sheriff has to provide to the residents of the county. And we serve about 30,000 warrants countywide every year. Our civil process, about the same. Investigations, we provide some level of investigations depending on what the city can provide to themselves. We will not supplant local law enforcement, but we will supplement local law enforcement. So if you think about the 8 lines of business, that is a full-service law enforcement agency in this country. And usually what happens is the sheriff's office provides the backdrop of law enforcement for the agencies in the county or the city. If the city, like yours, has a local police department, you choose what level of service you want to provide, a kind of value added or in addition to what the sheriff's office provides for your residents, and then what you don't provide, we will provide those lines of business as the primary service level, or in this case, with the 3 lines of business you do provide, answering 911 calls through, I think, your dispatches in Edina, and then responding out to 911 calls and some level of investigation. That's handled by the city of Richfield primarily, and we defer the local autonomy for Chief Henthorne and the men and women out here to answer those calls for service. And then our crime lab, I'm going to talk about that in a second here. Actually, we'll talk about it right now. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, we are undergoing our re-accreditation process. We undergo that accreditation process every 3 years. It's really important to us. Our forensic scientists, there are about 40 of them, along with our CSIs, our crime scene investigators, work in tandem. If you have a crime out here that requires lab services, local law enforcement will contact the CSIs. They'll come out to help process the scene. They will inventory the evidence down at the crime lab. The forensic scientists will process that evidence, and then they will appear in court sometime later to testify to the evidence as needed by the prosecution or the defense. And I talked to you for a minute, Mr. Mayor and council members, about the opioid crisis. I noted that Ms. Gonzalez works for healthcare, and there are a lot of folks out there that do a lot of different things. This is one area where our county has really, it's hit us really hard. I mean, there's no easy way to say it. Last year we had 162 opioid-related deaths. The year before that, 153. The year before that, 110. Just in the last 2 years, a 47% increase in opioid-related overdose deaths countywide. Our county is not any different than the other 6 metro counties or the other 80 counties across Minnesota or what's happening across the country. But I know 2 things for sure. One, every single one of these are preventable. Every single one of them are tragic, and we got to figure out a way to do it. We always say that, local law enforcement are the first responders. We provide enforcement, intervention, prevention. We're not so good on the last 2. We're really good on the first one, which is enforcement, but we rely on our second responders to help us out. Educators, the faith community, local elected officials, business, healthcare, and we all have a stake in this in order to do what's right on behalf of our community. Our opioid overdose deaths run about 2.5 times our homicide rate countywide. So if I had 162 homicides in Hennepin County last year, I'd bet that it'd be on the front page of the Star Tribune or on the 4, 5, 9, 10, 11, all news channels in between, but it's not. And I don't know why that is. I have these conversations all the time with the local media as well as local elected officials. I do not think we should just give in and say, hey, that's okay. 162 people dying in my county last year, a 16-year-old girl and a 98-year-old man, in all cities in between, I think is extremely tragic, and we can do better. Having said that, I'm also aware that your firefighters out here carry Narcan, naloxone, and that is a very good thing. And just a couple of weeks ago, I had a chance to recognize 6 local police departments who carry Narcan, naloxone. Between them, they had over 50 saves. That's 50 times they administered Narcan, naloxone, and brought somebody back to life, gave them a chance to go home to their families, live to fight another day, and beat that addiction issue, which is a good thing. All right, I'll get off my bully pulpit with opioids, but I wanted you to know how I felt about it. We, like I said, we're not very good on the enforcement aspect. Oh, we're really good on the enforcement, not so good on prevention, intervention. But the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, and working with the county board and our county partners, have #NoOverdose, which is our prevention, intervention piece. We work with the professional sports teams in town. You'll see billboards across. We do town hall meetings with our 45 cities and 22 school districts. We try and try and try, but still those numbers are creeping up on us. I do not suspect that 2018 will be any lower than 162 deaths, unfortunately. The other part the sheriff's office does is reduction of violent crime. Guns, gangs, kids, and drugs. Every time I go out to a crime scene, every single one of them, a violent crime, rape, robbery, murder, aggravated assault, I'll see 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of these present. And I've been doing this a long time. For 20 years, I worked in Minneapolis. I ran their criminal investigations, homicide, robbery, the task forces. And now as a county sheriff, I see the same thing. Guns, gangs, kids, and drugs. Over the last 11 years, we've reduced violent crime in this county 25 to 26%. That's 25 to 26% less in terms of rape, robbery, murder, aggravated assault. Could we do better? Sure. But your local police chief, the cities around you, all do a phenomenal job banding together, working on our task forces, doing the right thing on behalf of our residents. And I promised you, Mr. Mayor and council members, 8 to 10 minutes. I took 8 minutes and 35 seconds. I'm sorry, Steve. I know what I promised you. I went a little bit over, but I wanted to make it easy and understandable in terms of what it is that we do and why we do what we do on behalf of public safety countywide. Lastly, Mr. Mayor, I will say that as elected officials, I know it, Commissioner Gattell knows it, others who may be watching know this. Public safety can't do what we do without the support of their elected officials, and I appreciate the support that you give your police and fire out here in the city of Richfield. Like I said, I get a chance to talk to your fire chief, your police chief. I understand what you do for them, and I greatly appreciate that. Mr. Mayor?
I want to thank you for taking time after what I know was a busy day to come out and bring us up to date on what you're doing down there. And once again, reinforcing the remarkable collegiality and cooperation between the county and the various cities and municipalities. We're all working towards the same goals, and based on the statistics, you're doing a great job at yours, and hopefully we can do as well out here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Comments?
Just first want to thank you, particularly for being here and coming out to us, and for your passion on the opioid epidemic. I mean, it's clear you have a passion for it, and it's an issue that's not going away. But I did have a couple questions from community members, our immigrant community. You know, I noticed that in the goals, I don't see any mention of our immigrant community in here, and there's a lot of concern in our community, a lot of fear, and in particular about the sheriff's role with ICE. And I just wonder if you would talk a little bit about your level of coordination with ICE to our community members that have fears and concerns about it.
Sure, that's a great question, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm happy to answer it. You should know that Sergeant Cal McDaniel is one of 8 folks who work in our community engagement team. They're out every single day across the community. Carmen Lopez, Jonathan Tran, Vong, Abdi Muhammad, and others. It's what they do every day. In terms of what I think you're specifically asking about is our relationship with ICE as it relates to the jail. I talked about the 33,000 bookings last year. Everybody who gets booked into the Hennepin County Jail gets treated the same. An immigration violation, right? It's not something that local law enforcement does. We don't go out and stop folks. I don't know of any law enforcement agency in this county, the sheriff's office included, that asks for a green card or citizenship at the time of an interaction with law enforcement. If it's a criminal investigation and they get booked in the Hennepin County Jail for some reason, all 33,000 people across the board get treated the same. Their fingerprints, their photo, that's how we positively identify them. The federal government took it out of local sheriff's hands a number of years ago when every time you're booked into jail and you get your fingerprints and photographs, we submit those to the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the state of Minnesota. The state of Minnesota, through the BCA, transfers those fingerprints to the FBI. The FBI positively identifies the individual, and they choose to share it then with the Department of Homeland Security, Immigration, Customs Enforcement. If, for some reason, and they don't share their federal privacy records with the local sheriff or local law enforcement, if for some reason Immigration, Customs Enforcement has purview or wants to talk with one of the inmates in the jail, they are welcome to do so. They ask us for a detainer. We do not honor detainers at the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, and I don't know of any of the other 86 sheriffs in Minnesota that do that either. However, we do cooperate with federal law enforcement, and we share resources, and we will tell them upon release when someone's going to be released from our custody. But no one is held beyond the time of their local charges being adjudicated. And that's where we've done our business. It's kind of walking that fine line between both sides, residents of the county who want us to do more, residents of the county who want us to do less, we just follow the law. My discretion is very limited with respect to this. There's a lot of mystique out there. But again, I appreciate your question because you give me a chance to clear it up with you here tonight.
I guess just one follow-up. You mentioned just following the law. What do, in terms of at the jail, is there any guidance given to folks about what they have to or can refuse in terms of having a conversation with ICE, for example? Do sheriff deputies tell folks of their rights to not have a conversation if they don't want to?
It's a great question as well. Again, immigration violations are not a criminal violation, they are civil. My deputies do not enforce federal civil law. ICE doesn't have any purview over the local elected sheriff. We make a phone call available to those that ICE wants to speak with in order they can clear up their immigration concerns or issues. In other words, if you think about, let's just take the number 40,000 bookings a year, and we know that it affects about 4,000. From 4,000, we whittle it down to about 400 that ICE wants to talk to. Now, ICE can either come and hold 400 individuals a year, or we can help facilitate that phone call if they so wish. And from there, they narrow it down to about 40 or less per year that they actually want. And so rather than having 400 visits or ICE picking up 400 people, transferring them out here to Bloomington to their office and doing something more, we think we're helping them out by narrowing it down to just 40 or so. The 40 they really want to talk to versus inconveniencing the other 400 who they just want to ask some questions about where they're from or place of birth, citizenship. And by the way, Mr. Mayor, council members, you didn't ask me, but there are 2 questions we ask during the booking process. There's a lot of questions we ask, right? We ask you your name, your date of birth. We ask you your height, weight, scars, marks, tattoos. We're required by state law in the Department of Corrections to ask place of birth and country of, place of birth, and then citizenship. If you are a citizen of somewhere other than the United States, you have consulate rights, and we have to notify the consulate that you are in our custody, whether it's Ecuador, Mexico, Poland, Germany. Many of them have consulates or contacts, consulars, available here in Minnesota, and that's why we make those contacts.
Well, thanks for being here again.
Yeah.
And I guess the last thing I would just issue a challenge to you. You know, you mentioned you have the purview as the elected sheriff, and I would just challenge you to use that purview to improve the communication with the immigrant community in Richfield and across Hennepin County. I think it is a challenging, it's a fearful time, and would challenge you to be part of that solution.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Anything? Thanks again, Sheriff. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the time to have me out here tonight, Mr. Mayor and council members. Representative Garcia, nice to see you again. Thank you.
You're welcome anytime.